Hello and welcome to Rick's RC Flying Channel. This is episode 5 of the Sweet and Low build. In this episode, we're going to take a look at installing the hinges and the elevator to the horizontal stab. So let's get started. Just before we start with the elevator hinging and installation, I just want to mention something that I noticed that with the camera settings that it can slightly distort the view of an object. I'm relatively new to this whole YouTube and camera stuff. I just started it in early February. And like if you notice, while it's sitting on the bench, it kind of makes it look like uh, the tips of the horizontal stab are square. So I just want to point out to the viewers that in fact it's not, that if I hold it up closer, you'll realize that it actually has a tapered look, which is as per design of the Sweet and Low. Anyways, I just thought I would mention that. And well, we'll get on now with the elevator installation. So in the shaping of the elevator, I'm checking how it butts against the stabilizer. And this particular edge here, which I have now, this butts really nice and flush with the trailing edge of the horizontal stab. So that looks real good. When I turn it around, um, it doesn't do the same. It almost it's butting against in this area, but I have a space here. And if you're ever questioning, which part is off, a good idea is to take a straight edge and just check, because as I was sanding it, I could have created an uneven situation, but this is perfectly straight. So checking here, so I can see light here, so that just reconfirms that this particular edge does have the high spot. So I'm going to have to take that out. So we'll just focus in this area here right now. All right, I'm pleased with that. Now I have to do some final shaping with the elevator. So, I mean, you can take the information off the plans, but what's easier is just take your ruler and line it up with the existing edge of the horizontal stab, and then just transpose that line here. And then you do the same on this side. And by the way, just a little tip for what it's worth, I use a 4B pencil. And if you use an H or a 2H pencil, uh, that lead is harder and lighter. So what consequently happens if you have to write something on a piece of balsa wood or inscribe a line, you're going to have to push a little harder in order to be able to see it. And consequently, more times than not, you end up making a mark in the balsa wood. And if you want to avoid that, by using a 4B, which is a softer lead and a darker lead, you don't have to push as hard in order to be able to see, whatever you're inscribing a line or making a notation on the wood. So something you might consider. Anyways, I'm going to go cut these edges off, and then we'll focus on the center. We're going to take a look now how to install the hinges. We're going to connect the elevator to the horizontal stab. And just before we get started, I do want to mention something here is that, I went and trimmed the elevator to pretty much be almost, exactly the way it's supposed to be. I left a little bit to do some little bit final sanding. However, that being said, if you're new to putting hinges on or have very little experience, I would recommend that you don't trim the flight control, in this case, the elevator, till after you have installed your hinges. In the event that you are slightly off because of the alignment of the hinges, and the event that, if it's off slightly to the right, obviously it's going to stick out here, but it's going to be short on this side. So if you left them oversized, then if you're slightly off, then you can go and trim the flight control, in this case, the elevator, to the correct size. That being said, if you ever get caught and you're slightly short, in this case, it's short on this side and too long on this, well, you trim off this side and just add wood here so you can bail yourself out. But to make life easy, as I said, if you don't have much experience, leave them oversized till after you put the hinges in, and then you can trim it. I went and cut them pretty much exactly the same. I have a lot of experience doing this, so I know my alignment's going to work. So we're going to install pin style hinges. These are made by Robart. I'm not sponsored by anybody, so these are just the hinges I like to use. Now, I use different hinges in different cases, and there's many different styles of hinges and different ways of doing it. Now, these are made, as I said, by Robart. I have found them to be very reliable. I've never had one fail. They have a steel pin through there, and very durable and easy to install. So let's take a look on how to install them. I've already put 5 in out of the 6, okay? And I've already prepared the elevator to receive the hinges on this side. And we're going to take a look why these are notched out in a moment after we install the hinge. So you're going to start off, of course, positioning where you want the hinges. And of course, being a kit build, on the plans, they show you where they recommend that you put the hinges. So I marked that all off. And then whatever the thickness of the flight control is, you have to find the exact center. This is really important. Try to be as accurate as you can to find the exact center in that wood. And you can measure at one end, measure at the other, and you could put a steel edge depending how big the flight control is. You could draw a line right through to guide you. There's different ways of doing it, or just measure each one individually, however you like to do that. But there is an easier, there's a tool that makes it rather precise, and that is a drill guide, and it's made by Robart, and it really works like a charm, and it actually serves 2 purposes. One, it's going to find the exact center, whatever the thickness of the wood is, just by the way this clamping system works, right? So whatever the wood is, this will squeeze in, and once it's locked in, that is the exact center of the thickness of that wood. Now, you have to line it up, laterally, wherever your line is, that has to be positioned. And I'll show you how I go about doing that. So it's placed on the wood. There it is, sitting on the wood, and squeeze it in. Now you can look down through this hole, and that's what I'm doing here now. And I have it, this center of that line that we marked where we want the hinge to be, that is perfectly in the center of that hole. Okay, so it's going to be bang on from that perspective. Now, where things could go wrong is if you don't line up the center of this hole with the target line of the hinge. So that you have to be careful. And I use a 3/16 inch drill bit, and I just put a wheel collar here because it's just basically a depth gauge. And this was just a broom handle, and I drilled it out and epoxied in this drill bit, and that's what I use to make these hinges. I don't recommend using an electric drill. It's just not necessary, and it's heavy and it's awkward. You want this whole process in making hinges has to be rather a precise exercise. So we just double check here again that in fact I am lined up. And that looks good. And then have it stabilized, and then you just go in here and we start making the hole. Now the elevator wood is rather soft, so it's rather easy. And once in a while, bring it up just to bring some of the shavings up if you can. We just want to tap out the shavings, and you can trial fit the hinge, and we need to go a little deeper. So that's good. Okay, so now I'm just going to show you something here. Actually, I can show you by just turning it around this way instead of pulling all the hinges out. Now, without the notch, if you install the hinge this way, you notice there's a space. And, if you want to avoid that space and, you don't want to squeeze that mechanism into the hole. Now, I've seen many models where, it's installed that way. That's fine too. But by notching it, you'll see a big difference. So now what we're going to do is position the hinge in here, and I'm just going to mark the required space that I need to put that notch in. And I just take a square file. Now, this is all going to get epoxy resin, and that's when I go and file once the resin, the balsa wood becomes, much harder, and that's when I go and do a really nice cutout for it in terms of filing it. So now you can see that the hinge fits in there. Okay, so it fits in. So now let's take a look on what that does in terms of the installation. It's it's always more than one way to do it, and different modelers have different preferences, and that's all fine. Okay, so now we're going to install this. Would be something if it didn't line up after saying it did. So there it is. As you can see, that's literally 100% lined up. So now you can see there's no gap. And to be quite honest with you, that aerodynamically, if you have a gap, it creates a drag coefficient and actually can create eddies over the flight control. And it's something that's seriously considered in high-speed aircraft. And I've flown over 50 different real full-scale aircraft, and I've seen every kind of hinge setup. But quite frankly, all the high-speed aircraft, all the jets I've flown, you can't see really much of any hinges. And if they they use this notch, anything to avoid that gap between the flight controls. So anyways, now the elevator doesn't move very much angle-wise. And of course, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to shape the leading edge of the elevator. We're going to sand that corner off, and that then will allow the elevator to uh, angle itself properly, because right now that edge is hitting the stab. So, and that's a very normal design. So there you go. That's how you install it. And they're exactly center, and they did give us, with this size of wood, there's a little bit of extra there. So as we start the shaping process, we're going to sand this exactly flush. And this particular design on the airplane doesn't taper the flight controls. Many airplanes, the flight control would be tapered. In this airplane, it really isn't. Again, it was generically designed more as a sport aircraft, and they wanted to give it that level of durability. Obviously, if it's tapered and very thin at the edge, and you hit it at the edge of the car door, it makes a bigger dent than when it's a bit thicker at the trailing edge of the elevator. But anyways, so I'm going to do some shaping, and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, I'm going to be sanding the elevator now flush with the horizontal stab. And the reason I put the tape here is I want to protect the wood on the stab. So when I go to sand it, as I'm sanding it, in the event especially when I get closer and closer to having it flush, the masking tape will protect the wood, and because I don't want to damage or scratch it during this process. So that's why we have the masking tape. So I'm just going to turn the vacuum on, and that way we'll manage some of the dust. Okay, I think we're done with the sanding, and you may notice that the masking tape is showing signs of the sandpaper contacting it, so it's scratching it. So you're really, really close in terms of getting it flush. And and it's a good guide, being able to see when you're contacting the masking tape. And the elevator has been shaped in this area here. So you can see there's a very little gap. And there it is, full deflection. And notice when it comes up, there's actually no gap as it starts to actually move in its position. So it's a really nice, clean look. Now, you don't have to go quite to this trouble. I mean, I said if you don't want to notch it, that's fine too. I mean, I've seen a lot of models like that. And so we'll just do a little bit of sanding here to clean it up. All right. So we've got horizontal stab and elevator completed. Okay, so now we have everything basically shaped. There will be some final sanding of the edges. The leading edge will be rounded off, and so will the uh, trailing edge of the elevator. That'll be all shaped. But generally, we have, for the most part, have it nicely finished. The elevators, of course, are hinged. Now, the plans call for the elevators to be separated. So they're going to be cut at an angle like this. So that allows the rudder to move left and right. And you can probably have noticed the idea of keeping this one piece instead of separating it right at the beginning stages. um, there's a possibility, when you go to install the hinges on this side and that something might just not be exactly the same. But by keeping this one piece and finishing it off as one unit and hinging it as one unit, when we go to separate it, they're going to be bang on. And so that's the idea of that. And I try to do it that way whenever the build allows for that. So that's, I'm going to cut it a little bit later. And another reason I'm not really finishing the edges off, in case I bang it or something like that, we don't want to start doing some final shaping at this stage and then ding it. I don't, the shop is getting tighter and tighter all the time, so I do bang things from time to time. So, anyways, that'll come a bit later, but uh, all the work has basically been done. If you like the video, please hit like and subscribe. If you have any comments or any questions, I welcome them. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.